Hi, I'm Tom R., pastor at Village Church. Welcome to Village Connect. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're with some friends because your conversation is the most important part of this experience. In this session, we're going to be reflecting on some verses in the 10th chapter of Mark's Gospel. I'm going to ask you to begin reading at verse 32, where Jesus, for the third time, predicts his passion, we call it, his suffering, and read all the way through verse 52. That's chapter 10, verse 32 through 52. That'll lead you through the reading of the healing of blind Bartimaeus, a fascinating story in Mark's Gospel. Read through that, and when you've finished, come back and we'll start the conversation. I'm at the Negro League Baseball Museum. It's one of the gifts of Kansas City. Here in this museum, there are stories told of extraordinary African-American athletes who played America's game. Forbidden to play in the major leagues. In the 20s, they formalized leagues of their own. There are stories here of Josh Gibson, of Kansas City Monarchs, Satchel Paige, and Buck O'Neil. They played the game for the love of the game, and they played the game for pride. And they played the game as protest, to declare and to demonstrate to a culture that said they were not equal and were not worthy, that they were both equal and they were worthy. It was not until 1945 that the Brooklyn Dodgers recruited Jackie Robinson, a player of extraordinary baseball talent and a giant spirit. The leagues continued on for another 15 or so years until the Negro Leagues dissolved in the early 60s. In 1974, in April of that year, I was in Atlanta Fulton County Stadium. It was there that I saw Henry Aaron break Babe Ruth's home run record. As a 14-year-old kid, it was a highlight of my childhood. Of course, I had no way of knowing that every day he was receiving death threats for playing baseball, death threats for beating a white man's home run record. This museum is about the Negro Leagues, but it's really about all of us because racism is part of the American story from the first day until this very present day. Racism is part of the American story. And at its essence, racism is a question of humanity. What is it that makes a human being a human being? And to that question, our wisest teacher is Jesus of Nazareth. He teaches and reveals to us what makes us human. So in the passage that we read, Jesus tells his disciples again for the third time, he's going to be handed over, crucified, on the third day rise. His disciples don't get it, but there's one guy who at least wants to get it. It's blind Bartimaeus. This section of Mark's Gospel, it begins there at the end of the 8th chapter with the healing of the blind man at Bethsaida. It ends here with the healing of the blind man Bartimaeus. And in between these two stories, like brackets that hold it all as one unit, Jesus tries to open the eyes of his own disciples that they might understand his life and his destiny his way of service and sacrifice. So we come to blind Bartimaeus. He's on the road. He cries out to Jesus. Some things to know about this story. Of all the people that Jesus heals in Mark's gospel, this is the only one who has a name. And not only do we hear his name, we actually hear it twice. Bartimaeus means son of Timaeus. Bar in Aramaic means son. So Bartimaeus, a son of Timaeus. And then it's repeated in Greek, son of Timaeus. The name's got to be important. He's the only person that Jesus heals that we're told his name, and we're told the name twice, and it's an odd name. It's not an Aramaic name. It's not a Hebrew name. What kind of name is this? Did you ever have required reading in school? Moby Dick or Canterbury Tales, a little Milton, maybe some James Baldwin, maybe To Kill a Mockingbird. That was one of my favorites. Well, there was required reading in Jesus' day too, and if there was reading that everybody knew, it would have been Plato. Hundreds of years before Jesus, Plato wrote a dialogue, and in this particular dialogue, there is an explanation of the creation of the world and an explanation of the creation of a human being. And in between these two pieces, there's an eloquent praise of the gift of sight, of human sight. And in Plato's dialogue, it says that the gift of sight allows us to see the world rightly, and those who see the world rightly can engage in interpreting our world, or as Plato would say, engage in the gift of philosophy. It is the greatest gift of the human experience, Plato argued, and then he reflected, now there's some who are blind, physically or otherwise. They don't see the world rightly. They are less than human. That's Plato's teaching. Why am I telling you this? The name of that dialogue is the Timaeus. If I understand it, Mark's community is in an argument with the philosophy of Plato about what makes us human. Plato argues that it's those who are really smart. The philosopher, no surprise that would appeal to Plato, that those who are really smart are more human than those who are lesser. It's a common argument, what makes us human. It's always an argument that is offered to suggest that there are some who are more human than others, be it race, be it talent, be it wealth, be it culture, be it intelligence. But Jesus offered a different read. And here there is a son of philosophy, a son of Timaeus, who cries out to Jesus like a blind man saying, I want to see what you can show me. I want you to open my eyes that I can know what it is to be human. And Jesus opened his eyes and he followed him on the way. Throughout this whole section, and particularly in this story, Jesus makes it clear, if we want to know what it is to be human, we pay attention to those on the bottom. We pay attention to those who are passed by. We pay attention to those who are ignored. We pay attention to those who are broken. It was Dietrich Bonhoeffer who once said, we would be much better off if we regarded each other not by what we accomplish, but by what we have suffered. This son of philosophy, this son of Timaeus, says, I want to see. And Jesus says, follow me on the way to the cross, on the way to sacrifice, on the way to new life and resurrected life. That's what it is to be human, to follow him on the way.